to set the agenda for the summit, and this meeting comes amid eased tensions on the Korean Peninsula and a global diplomatic push to resolve the standoff over North Korea's nuclear weapons program. And before we sit down with an expert to talk more about this, let's first check out the top stories at this hour with our Devin Whiting at the News Center. Devin.
Hi, Gio, and that's right. The date is now set. South and North Korea will hold their third ever summit on April 27th. The decision was reached by high-level delegates from Seoul and Pyongyang who met at the border village of Panmunjom today. We'll now go live to our Oh Jung-hee, who's standing by at the Office for Inter-Korean Dialogue in Seoul. So, Jung-hee, fill us in.
Devin, the two Koreas will hold their third historic inter-Korean summit talks on April 27th at the Peace House, which is on the South Korean side of the truce village of Panmunjom. The announcement was made by South Korea's unification minister an hour ago. Take a listen.
South and North Korea agreed to work together to successfully hold an inter-Korean summit in view of the historic significance it will have in terms of the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, building peace, and improving inter-Korean relations. With the agreement of both leaders, the South and the North have decided to hold the 2018 Inter-Korean Summit on April 27th at the Peace House in Panmunjom.
And to prepare for the summit, Seoul and Pyongyang will hold a couple of working-level talks. As for now, we know that the first round will be held on April 4th, that's next Wednesday, on the South Korean side of Panmunjom, to discuss protocol, security, and press coverage for the summit. The two sides will hold another working-level meeting to discuss communications, but when and where is to be decided later on. Seoul and Pyongyang will continue exchanging documents as they prepare. Just to give you a recap, today's talks were held at Tongilgak, a building located on the North Korean side of Panmunjom. The South Korean delegation was led by Unification Minister Cho Myung-gyun, and the North Korean side by Lee Sun-kwon, chairman of the North Committee for Peaceful Reunification.
Right, Jung-hee, well, this announcement came out fairly quickly, rather unlike the first high-level talks in January. Do we have any idea what's to be discussed at the summit?
You're right. Today's talks went very quickly, almost like they were in a rush. The general meeting, which started at about 10 this morning, lasted for only about 50 minutes, and the joint press announcement came out after a 20-minute-long meeting. And the leaders of each delegation read out the announcement to the press at Panmunjom just about an hour ago. But what's not in the joint statement is whether the two sides were able to decide on the exact agenda they want to discuss. The main objective of today's talks was to set the date and the agenda, but for now we have no idea what the two leaders will discuss on April 27th. After the joint press announcement, the leader of the North Korean side was asked about the agenda of the summit talks, to which he answered only the agenda of the inter-Korean summit talks will cover everything in inter-Korean relations. Devin.
All right, thanks for that. Oh Jung-hee at the Office for Inter-Korean Dialogue in Seoul. Meanwhile, a team of South Korean technicians headed north this morning to set up the performance stage for two concerts to be held in North Korea early next month. There are 70 people on the team. They left for Pyongyang at around 10:30 a.m. South Korea time. Another 120 South Koreans, the musicians, taekwondo demonstration teams, reporters, and government support staff will head north on Saturday. Chinese President Xi Jinping has sent a special envoy to Seoul today to brief South Korean officials on the outcome of the talks earlier this week between Beijing and Pyongyang. The envoy is Yang Jie-chur, a key Chinese diplomat and member of the Politburo. He's expected to meet this afternoon with President Moon's National Security Advisor Chung Eui-yong. They'll also be having dinner together. On Friday, the Chinese envoy will meet with President Moon. In addition to the talks between Kim Jong-un and President Xi, it's expected that Yang will also be discussing the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and other issues. And as preparations continue for the summits with North Korea, analysts have detected new activity at the regime's main nuclear complex. Recent satellite imagery suggests a reactor has been powered up after years of construction work. That's an issue that would likely be brought up by President Trump in his talks with Kim Jong-un. Park Hee-jun reports.
Numerous reports are indicating fresh activity at North Korea's nuclear sites. According to the New York Times, satellite imagery taken in February shows what appears to be emissions from a smokestack, suggesting a new North Korean reactor situated at the Yongbyon nuclear complex is firing up now after years of construction. Recent analysis by the Center for International Security and Cooperation at Stanford University also indicates that North Korea may have begun testing an experimental light water reactor. Both can be used to produce the fissile materials needed for nuclear bombs. Pyongyang has claimed that the plant was built to produce electricity for civilian use, but Jane's intelligence review cautioned that it's impossible to know for sure without international inspections whether the reactor is indeed for civilian electricity or whether it's for creating weapons-grade nuclear material. North Korea hasn't conducted any nuclear tests since last November. However, the activity at the reactor could raise tension as it comes at an especially sensitive time with the Trump-Kim talks coming up in the next few months. The new nuclear activity is likely to be the central issue for the talks, as the United States' core goal continues to be denuclearizing the North. And it raises the need for President Trump to not only push for North Korea to give up its nuclear weapons, but also the factories and reactors that create the material to build more weapons. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
In other news, South Korea's first F-35A stealth fighter jet was unveiled at a rollout ceremony in Texas on Wednesday. It's considered the most advanced fighter aircraft ever built and is expected to improve South Korea's air defense capabilities. Park Ji-won has more.
The first South Korean F-35A fighter aircraft made its public debut at a rollout ceremony held at Lockheed Martin's assembly line in Texas on Wednesday local time. Some 450 key defense and military officials from the South Korean Air Force and U.S. Air Force, as well as other officials and politicians from both countries, attended the ceremony. South Korea's Vice Defense Minister Ho Ju-seok and the South Korean Air Force's Vice Chief of Staff Lee Sung-yong were among the attendees. In a video message, South Korea's Defense Minister Song Yang-moo dubbed the fifth-generation stealth aircraft as the world's best fighter jet, saying the deployment of the F-35A will greatly enhance the nation's ability to secure its sovereign airspace. 6 F-35A aircraft will be manufactured for South Korea this year and will be delivered to Luk Air Force Base in Arizona, where South Korean fighter pilots will train with the jets before they are delivered to Cheongju Air Base in South Korea next month. By 2021, the South Korean Air Force will have 40 F-35A aircraft. The F-35As are equipped with radar evasion capabilities and are expected to significantly enhance the country's defense against North Korea. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
And after 3 months of talks, South Korea and the United States have officially reached an agreement in principle on the terms of amending their FTA. Both sides have expressed satisfaction with the concessions they squeezed out of each other. Kim Hae-sung reports.
In a joint statement, Seoul's Trade Minister Kim Hyun-jong and U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer said the two countries were pleased to announce that they have reached an agreement in principle on the amendment of their bilateral trade deal. The statement released Wednesday night local time said the agreement addresses issues on investment, tariffs, automobiles, customs, and trade remedies. Seoul has agreed to lift some of its safety and environmental regulations and will allow U.S. automakers to ship Korea up to 50,000 vehicles each, up from 25,000 previously. Tariffs imposed on Korean pickup trucks exported to the U.S. will be extended by 20 years to 2041. South Korea, on the other hand, secured revisions to the investor-state dispute settlement clause, and the two sides also agreed to improve the transparency of the trade dispute settlement process, which covers issues like anti-dumping duties. But as South Korea's trade minister mentioned at a press conference Monday, there is no further opening of Korea's agricultural market or the mandatory use of U.S. auto parts. The announcement comes less than 3 months since the first round of trade talks began in January. In the joint statement, Seoul and Washington said the agreement represents an important progress in improving Korea-U.S. trade and economic relations based on their strong and enduring security relationship. As well as the FTA amendment, there's an agreement on exempting South Korea from the Trump administration's 25% steel tariff measures. In exchange, South Korea's quota will be set at 2.68 million tons of steel exports a year, or 70% of its average annual shipments to the U.S. between 2015 to 2017. The arrangement with respect to steel products is expected to take effect on May 1st. Working-level officials are ironing out the details so that Seoul and Washington can finalize their amendments to the 6-year-old trade deal soon, which are subject to domestic procedures in both countries before the provisions can be brought into force. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
I'm Devin Whiting, and those are your news headlines for this hour.
High-level officials from the two Koreas met for the first time today since their official face-to-face meeting back in January to discuss the upcoming inter-Korean summit set for next month between President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. And to tell us more about the meeting as well as recent developments in regards to North Korea, Professor Shin Sang-hyuk from Kyung University joins us in the studio today. So good to see you.
Great to be here.
All right, so today high-level officials from the two Koreas met in the village of Panmunjom, and it's been decided that the two leaders of the two Koreas will meet on April 27th. Now, what came out of today's meeting?
Well, first of all, the atmosphere at the meeting was very, very good. And they produced quite the productive outcomes. First of all, they set the date for the summit meeting, April 27th. And the places, it will be the South Korean side in the Panmunjom compound.
Okay.
And also they will have the working level talks for protocols and the secret services for the leaders, and then how to report the events. And these are the outcomes made by the both high officials at today's meeting.
Now, were there any discussions over the issue of denuclearization in regards to North Korea?
Not very much at this meeting, but I think it will be one of the very important issues at the agenda for the summit meeting planned in the April, because as we know very well, the USA government has made it very clear that denuclearization will be the prerequisite for the successful outcome at the summit meeting between the North Korea and the United States. So, excuse me, at the summit meeting between two Korean leaders, well, particularly President Moon Jae-in will just try to explain the needs of the denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula, which is the support for the stance of the USA government toward this issue. Of course, in this context, the South Korean government will contact the USA government to persuade the North Korean side stance about this issue. Well, so the summit meeting between two Korean leaders planned in April will be a kind of some stepping stone for the successful outcomes at the summit meeting between USA President Trump and the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
So we have the working level talks between the two Koreas coming up next Wednesday.
Right.
We have about a month to go until the actual summit between President Moon and Kim Jong-un. So what are some of the tasks at hand?
Right now, I mean, definitely at the summit meeting between two Korean leaders, along with the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, they will discuss how to build permanent peace on the Korean Peninsula. Of course, these two issues are directly related. By achieving denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, we can achieve the permanent peace on the Korean Peninsula. But as I already explained, there must be big differences on the stance about this issue between USA and North Korea without narrowing down the different views about this issue between USA and North Korea. I think, practically speaking, it will be very difficult for us to see the very successful outcome at the summit meeting between USA and North Korea. So definitely, how to build a permanent the peace on the Korean Peninsula will be a kind of some clue persuading the USA side and North Korean side about the denuclearization issue on the Korean Peninsula.
Now, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un visited Beijing to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping. What impact do you think this meeting between Xi and Kim will have on the upcoming inter-Korean summit?
Well, I think it gives a little bit negative impact on the success at the summit between two Korean leaders. Why? Because it was reported that China and North Korean leaders, they agreed on so-called the gradual denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, which is really different stance from the USA government.
Right.
In 2002 and 2005, this approach was taken by the the USA and North Korea. At the time, at the final stage, the North Korean government did not allow USA and the International Nuclear Organization, IAEA, to monitor and check how much they stop. Whether the North Koreans stopped the nuclear programs or not. So at the time, USA could not do anything simply because North Korean government did not allow it. So certainly, as Mr. President, Mr. Trump has emphasized several times already, definitely the USA will not take this approach, which was agreed by the Chinese leader and North Korean leader. So the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, when he will have a summit meeting with President Moon Jae-in, he will stick to this stance.
Right, gradual
denuclearization. That means that President Moon Jae-in could have difficult time to persuade him to change their stance toward this issue, which will be very important for the successful outcome at the summit meeting between USA and North Korea.
Now, meanwhile, top Chinese diplomat, Politburo member Yang Jiechi came to Seoul today and will be briefing President Moon tomorrow about the Beijing talks between Xi and Kim. Tell us more about this.
Well, definitely the Chinese government also the concern about responses from the Korea and USA. But just before the summit meeting was reported, about 30 minutes before, they give a notice to Korean government about this summit meeting. And then they sent the Yang Jiechi, he's the member of the China's 25-member the Politburo. He's quite high top the diplomat, definitely. And then by explaining the outcomes and then the details about the summit meeting between Chinese leader and then North Korean leader, they want to maintain the channel with the South Korean government. That will be a kind of some a stepping stone, the first step for having a solution to the North Korean nuclear crisis. But the point is that maybe we have to think about responses of Russia and Japan. Well, as we know very well, Japanese Prime Minister is planned to have a summit meeting with the Trump before the summit meeting between USA and North Korea.
Right.
And then it is not yet the Russian government officially, they announced that they do not have any plan to meeting with the North Korean leader or North Korean high government officials. But Russia want to join into this procedures. So definitely maybe it can be a kind of some first step to returning to the six-party talks, which was the main tool to discuss about the solution for the North Korean nuclear crisis.
Now, what's interesting, though, is that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has been actively kind of reaching out to other countries like China, South Korea, and also inviting President Trump for a summit. So what do you think are North Korea's real intentions behind all this?
Well, he seems to take some initiatives in changing the atmosphere. As you know very well, since the U.S. and then United Nations started to implement economic sanctions against North Korea, along with many countries around the world, North Korea has faced very huge difficulties. Well, it is expected that the difficulties could be more serious as time goes on. And the relations with the China, which was one of the strongest allies for them, well, it was very bad because China joined to the pressure, the policy, sanctions against North Korea along with the USA, simply because that China should have to protect their national interests.
Right.
But by having a summit meeting, propose to have a summit meeting and then have a real summit meeting with China, definitely they seem to have some momentum changing the atmosphere. I think it will be very important as well for the future summit meeting with the USA President, Mr. Trump, because by having a summit meeting with Xi Jinping, the leader of China, and then it means that China is back on North Korean side. That means that they will have some more advantageous position at the meeting with the President Trump. So this is the kind of the thoughts or wish they want to get from the measures taken, actions taken by them right now.
So like you said, with China in the room now, you think possibly a four-way dialogue between the two Koreas and the U.S. and China quite possible for happening? No?
Not very much,
Okay.
because as I already explained before, Russia and Japan have had the huge interest in the situations happening in North Korea and South Korea. So the Japan has been really concerned about so-called Japan passing. But after the report about the summit meeting between the Chinese leader and North Korean leader, Japan got surprised because actually they have been the outsiders during the whole this process. So definitely Japan actually did not want to see this situation continued for a while. So when if anyone wants to have some four-party talks, Japan will respond very immediately, and they want to join to this talk. So that means, as I already explained, six-party talks will be restarted. Because I did not explain the responses from Russia, but Russia has at the stake at the Korean issues, definitely. So, and then for North Korea, Russia is second, the strongest ally over the last several decades. So definitely the possibility of having a six-party talks is much larger than four-party talks. Yes.
All right. Well, we know that Chinese President Xi Jinping called President Trump to brief about the meeting with Kim Jong-un, and Trump did say in his Twitter account that he looks forward to meeting Kim Jong-un, but those sanctions and maximum pressure will stay in place.
Yes, I think so, because Mr. Trump has emphasized the 2 points regarding the summit meeting or with the North Korean leader or North Korean nuclear crisis. The first one is that until the North Korea change their stance officially, the pressure, economic sanctions will be continued. And then secondly, at the meeting with North Korean leader, the denuclearization of Korean Peninsula, denuclearization of North Korea is kind of some prerequisite for the successful outcomes at the summit meeting. So they do not change it, and by nominating so-called hardliners among the government officials in USA, like John Bolton, former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, and then Pompeo, who is the new Secretary of State. They are hardliners, definitely. That means that hardliners means in this, about this issue, they will have the same idea, opinion with the President Trump. That means denuclearization is number one requirement for having a summit meeting, successful summit meeting. Second one is that the pressure, the policy, economic sanctions will be continued until North Korea change. So definitely the possibility to have a successful outcome at the summit meeting between USA President and North Korean leader planned in May has been a little bit reduced. I'm really concerned about the outcomes of the summit meeting between two leaders in May.
I think for now we have to keep our eyes on when Kim Jong-un will actually respond with a date or any details on when he's going to be meeting with President Trump.
I think it will. We have to wait for a while because that in April, as we discussed before, there will be a summit meeting between North and South Korea. Of course, on the part of the USA, they will be able to contact with North Korea directly, but considering their policy toward North Korea over the several years,
right,
they prefer to contact North Korea indirectly. Indirectly means that through South Korean president, South Korean government, they want to transfer what their thought about this summit meeting to North Korea. So definitely through the summit meeting between two Korean leaders, maybe they will try to adjust some differences about these issues between with North Korea. So we have to wait for a while, I think.
All right. Thank you so much for your insight today.
My pleasure.
And that brings us to the end of our program. But be sure to tune in to Arirang News for more domestic and global news updates throughout the day. Thanks for watching and see you soon.